The genesis of this video actually started off embedded in another video that you will see in the future, maybe months or weeks from now, who knows. You'll see it when you see it. Anyway, I realized I had enough here to warrant its own video, so here it goes. I want to talk about the character of Stephanie Brown from DC Comics. Introduced in the early 1990s, she was the daughter of a little-known Batman villain from the 60s, Cluemaster, and her whole thing was that she was tired of his life of crime, so she took it upon herself to secretly spoil his crimes, thus her codename Spoiler. I'm of mixed minds on this character. I think there's some very interesting ideas here, mixed with some irritating characterization, and throw in a horrible end that this character met via bad writing and equally bad retcons, and you've got some problematic nonsense here. What I find fascinating about Spoiler, compared to most of Batman's other costume allies he's worked with over the years, is that her motivation is completely unconnected to Batman and his own personal crusade. She has pretty compelling reasons for doing what she does, and it's nice seeing someone with motivations that don't connect to DC Comics' big corporate moneymaker. The only reason she even crosses paths with Batman at all is because she lives in his city, and Batman gets pretty possessive of other costume folks operating in his city. But she's also kind of an irritating character. This kind of thing is subjective, so there are probably people who really like Stephanie, but Bruce trying to put a stop to her nighttime vigilante antics wasn't just because this town ain't big enough for the two of them. She was a teenager with absolutely no training, and she's going out trying to jump off buildings and punch people with guns who will kill her without hesitation. Batman's a jerk, but he's a jerk who is trying to save her life, or he's trying to put her life in danger to guilt trip a previous Robin into coming back to the nest. Pick your interpretation. But her stubbornness made me dislike her because Bruce had a pretty fair point when he was trying to put a stop to her costume adventures, but she said, "Nah, I know what I'm doing," when she very clearly did not. And I guess eventually the people writing and reading these stories got tired of this dichotomy of Batman saying, "Stop doing this," and Stephanie Brown saying no, that they wanted to shake things up. So Tim Drake, the third Robin, has quit because his dad found out that he was Robin and wanted him to stop. So mere issues after Bruce Wayne was mourning the death of Jason Todd, the second Robin, and how him being Robin is what resulted in his death, Bruce decided to allow Stephanie to become Robin number 4, after he spent months and months telling her that this life was very dangerous. He'd have a point if he didn't already have her on-again, off-again boyfriend working as Robin while he said that, since, you know, Jason Todd, dead. Anyway, like I said earlier, this whole 2 issues of Stephanie replacing Tim as Robin really felt to me like Bruce did this just to make Tim jealous so that he would come back and be Robin. I know Batman isn't meant to be a super pleasant person to be around, and he has well-documented cases of paranoia where he thinks everyone he knows is going to turn into a supervillain that he will have to take down someday. But I thought his Bat family were the exception to the rule, not other chess pieces for him to coldly manipulate. The whole point of having Stephanie become Robin and get fired faster than my last trip to the doctor was so that she could have access to the Batcave and steal Batman's War Games scenario. The War Games program was a we have no other options kind of deal where Batman, in his guise as Matches Malone, would gather all the gangsters of Gotham City and have them working under one gangster, him. He could control all the crime in the city this way. Now, I know I just complained about Batman being a manipulative control freak a second ago, but this was an idea I would not have minded seeing play out for real. A while back, there was a Daredevil storyline where Daredevil took control of the Hand, evil death-defying ninjas. Literally death-defying. Like, they see death and they get right up in her face and say, "I defy you." Anyway, people did not like that story. I have no opinion, I did not read it. But very rarely do you see legitimately good reasons for heroes to become villainous. You see villains turn good quite often, and more often than not, they turn back into bad guys. But heroes turning bad, most of the time, it's either mind control or alternate reality versions of themselves or what have you. But a street-level hero who has been through some serious stuff finally deciding the best way to save his city is to become one with the darkness and take over the bad guy team so that he can stop it from happening at the source, that isn't a bad idea conceptually. And you have Batman. His city's been through earthquakes, plagues, his sidekicks have been murdered and crippled for life. He's probably at that place emotionally where just one more bad thing, like an innocent kid getting gunned down in a gang shootout, would probably push him to the point where he would do something like this. Obviously, it wouldn't be a permanent status quo, but it would be interesting to see that explored for about a year or so, stretched out across all of the various Bat comics. Anyway, Stephanie decides to activate the War Games scenario, but unfortunately for her, she is unaware of the most crucial part of this plan, that Batman is Matches Malone. And since he doesn't know about this meeting, he's not there to make it all come together. So all of these gangsters are called to a meeting, tensions are high, they end up shooting at each other, and then a massive gang war engulfs the city, resulting in Black Mask, who everyone thought was dead, coming back to reclaim what's left of the Gotham underworld. And in the process, he tortures and kills Stephanie. Some people have said this was just a complicated way of getting rid of Stephanie, and that's not entirely true. It was also a means of getting rid of Orpheus and Onyx. Now, I don't want to suggest that there was something motivated by race or gender here, but this story ends with these three characters completely removed from the comics, either by completely ignoring the character's existence or by a very horrifying death. Maybe I'm just reading too much into it, but the evidence doesn't look too good here. But these heroes getting unceremoniously tortured and killed in pretty gruesome ways isn't the worst of it. Leslie Tompkins, Bruce's doctor friend who knows that he's Batman and takes every opportunity she can to remind him that she hates that part of his life, decides to let Stephanie die so that Bruce can see the consequences of him being Batman. Never mind all the good Bruce has done as Batman. Never mind that Jason Todd should be enough of a reminder of all those consequences, although Bruce seemed to forget all about Jason when he took in not one but two other kids to follow in his footsteps. So in the aftermath of War Games, Bruce finds Leslie and tells her never to come back to Gotham. A horrible ending to a meandering story that existed only to remove Stephanie from the board and put Tim back in the tights, right? Wrong. Apparently backlash was so negative, and really, can you blame anyone for reacting negatively to all of this? The higher-ups decided that Leslie didn't actually allow Stephanie to die. She saved her life, but allowed everyone to believe that Stephanie was dead. Apparently, this was all done because Stephanie's identity had been compromised during the aftermath of her air quotes death. So let me get this straight. You fake her death, and then everyone in the world finds out that she was really the costume hero. Spoiler, so now she has to go into hiding with Leslie in Africa. And you don't tell her mom, who was an absolute mess while grieving her daughter during the war crime storyline. And you don't even bother telling Batman or Tim, who were kind of close to her as well. And then after Batman and Robin do finally figure out that she's alive, she comes back to Gotham as if nothing happened. What about your compromised identity? You know, the reason you faked your death? Oh, and apparently Bruce suspected Stephanie was alive all this time, which is why he didn't build a memorial to her in the Batcave like he did for Jason. Then she eventually becomes Batgirl, and I haven't read any of that, so I can't speak to the quality of all of that. Since this is one of those videos where I offer my own fix on a plot that is broken, what would I do differently here? Well, there's the thing where Batman becomes a crime lord. That, I think, would have been really cool to explore. But as far as Stephanie, even though I wasn't the biggest fan of her character when she refused to see how dangerous this was for someone with not a single day of training for this kind of life, I did not like the way that any of this was handled. I think you could have taken this character in a different direction and really done something cool with her. So let's start with the same starting point the character had in the comics. Her dad's a supervillain. She wants to put a stop to his plans. This goes on for a few years. She crosses paths with Batman and Robin. Batman doesn't want her doing this because she's undisciplined and needs training like himself and the other Robins have gone through. Eventually, once Cluemaster is permanently behind bars, Stephanie decides she wants to keep helping people, but she realizes Batman is right. Maybe Tim told her in confidence about Jason Todd and how he died. So Stephanie, unaware of how Bruce Wayne went on a world tour years earlier and turned himself into a weapon against evil, wants to do the same thing. But she's not a billionaire with piles of money to burn. She can't afford to go to New York City, let alone Nanda Parbat. So she does the next best thing. She goes to the Birds of Prey. One thing we know about Stephanie is she is resilient. Batman won't train her. Maybe Stephanie even thinks there's a little bit of a boys club thing going on there, since he says that it's for her safety, and she does know about Jason Todd by this point, but then there's Tim doing this kind of thing every day. But the Birds of Prey aren't really answerable to Batman. Yes, Barbara helps him and the Justice League with the communication and technology stuff like that, but she and the Birds of Prey are kind of doing their own thing. And if Batman doesn't want Stephanie to be trained, well, he doesn't have to know. And maybe Barbara is not okay with this. Look what happened to me. Do you want to end up like this? Stephanie doesn't know that Barbara ended up like this not because she was Batgirl, but because of who her father is. But maybe Barbara agrees with Bruce and thinks this could end badly for Stephanie. Perhaps Barbara doesn't realize Stephanie is genuinely interested in this life and isn't just a thrill seeker. Black Canary can remind Barbara about how she was when she was first starting out, and she went to Black Canary for help. This would be a callback to Batgirl Year One, a fine Barbara storyline if you haven't read it. So the Birds of Prey agree to make Stephanie an unofficial part of their team. She will be in the clock tower physically training and learning some technological stuff from Oracle when Canary and Huntress are out in the field. There's no reason Stephanie should want to become Batman's partner. He's condescending and patronizing and does everything he can to get her out of this life. Maybe for good reasons, but muddled good reasons at best. After a year or two of being a minor character in the Birds of Prey title, you could spin Stephanie off in her own book. You could call it spoiler, but since she's no longer spoiling her dad's crimes, it might be best to come up with a new identity for her. She could establish her own life in the DC universe instead of being a part of the Bat family, where there isn't much room for upward momentum. You either become a Robin and you get replaced by a previous Robin, or you become a Batgirl and get replaced by a previous Batgirl. But give her her own book with her own city and her own rogues gallery away from Gotham. Or if you can't do that, this would be trickier, but let her guest star in other books to whet everyone's appetite for the all-new, all-different Stephanie. The Jeff Johns Mike McCone Teen Titans series was beginning around this time. Maybe she joins that team for a couple of adventures. Maybe she joins Nightwing's Outsiders. Sure, that's still living in the shadow of other more well-established franchises, but it's better than her bleak fate if she stays in Batman's shadow in Gotham. Audiences latching on to a new series is a risky prospect, especially if it isn't directly tied to a property people already know and love. That's why characters like Riri Williams and Miles Morales are first established in existing titles, so that people can get to know them, and then they can get their own title once people fall in love with them. That's good business. Do something like that with Spoiler. And if people aren't interested in her own solo exploits outside of Gotham, at least she could have more of a life than what she did end up having as a recurring guest star in various other titles. So that's about all I have today. This one was a little different than the fixed videos I usually do, but I guess I had some stuff to say about this. So what do you guys think? Better than what we got? Still no good? Let me know in the comments below. And also, I do other videos during the week, reviews and that sort of thing. And I do these fix videos on a weekly basis, so check back next week to see some other thing that I'll be offering a fix on. Who knows what it'll be? Even I don't know. Until next time, have a good one.